Okay, let's move on to our final session of the day. Very, very excited about this because this is very indivisible centric. It's how to maintain a long-term grassroots.
You mean the marathon?
The marathon, not the sprint. So we're really, really excited to have some dynamo people here on our panel. There's going to be a little bit of a change in plans because Kay Brooks, who's also with Unite, is stuck with a flat tire. But as every good activist does, they call in for backup, and we have an incredible backup. Ricardo Lujan is going to be taking her seat. And we've also asked Jeff Golden, who has a wealth of knowledge in this field also, to sort of moderate the panel. And I think, does everybody know all these powerhouses too? No. Michelle Glass with Unite Oregon and Hannah Sohl from Road Climate. So without further ado, I present this dynamic panel. Thank you.
First of all, Jessica, this has been an amazing day. Thank you.
Yes.
So this is the marathon, not a sprint session. And I think a lot of us who've been around progressive politics for decades would agree perhaps that there's three main ingredients that a progressive movement needs. One is passion, and one is focus, and one is persistence. And I would grade us over the years very high on passion, and a bit mixed on focus, sometimes really on focus. And where we have fallen down is persistence and being effective and sustaining. So we are talking about, for purpose of conversation, a 4-year, the most focused, effective, intensive 4-year commitment to this that we can sustain for ourselves and the people we work with. So that's the topic. Ideas on that, on how to develop and nurture that commitment, is our topic for the next hour plus. And I'm going to ask my three colleagues here to start the discussion off with a few comments, and then let's mix it up and see what you think, questions and thoughts you have about sustaining a persistent movement. So, would you start, Ricardo?
Definitely.
Great.
Yeah, so again, thank you all for having all of us today, and Kay Brooks for subbing me in. Very excited to be part of this discussion.
Would you mind standing up?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. And speak loudly.
Yes, so long-term, persistent, passionate work in social justice. It's a very interesting concept to really get a hold of. I've been involved with social activism ever since I was a senior here in Ashland High School, and so I know quite a bit about how to go about moving forward in these issues, especially ones that present themselves so fast, and you might not have a lot of experience in this situation. So we'll go more in depth in our discussions about how to approach it, but one of the things that I definitely want to focus on is changing a mindset about being an activist to being an organizer. Now, there's conceptions, yes, that they both intertwine, they're both in some places the same, but for the longest time, I was an activist. I was very vocal. My main focus was towards immigration justice, and more specifically towards our Latino and immigrant community here in the Rural Valley. But my capacity was mainly as an activist. I showed up whenever my organizers at Unite Oregon, back then Oregon Action, called upon me. There's something happening, can you show up and do this action, march with us, do this speech. And of course I make myself as available as I could. But switching my role from an activist to an organizer, you get to truly realize how you really need to manage your time, your energy, and how to channel that passion into work that's actually going to be meaningful for the community that you're trying to impact, regardless of what kind of work that is. So hopefully while we're having this discussion, we can explore a little bit of that shift in mentality of being able to continue your passion, the reason why you got involved in the first place, but having that organizing aspect towards it as well. It's not just about going out there and giving it all that you can, being realistic as well as rational and self-caring, and having a different mindset of of an organizer rather than an activist so much. So that'll be my quick intro, and yeah, I hope we continue this conversation as well.
Thanks. You want to turn the show?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I know it's been a long day, and y'all have been having some great conversations, and I'm excited to be able to be part of that. This is a topic that I think in the Rogue Action Center, which is the office that I share with about half a dozen other organizations, we talk about, I would say, on a constant basis. This is something that I think isn't a one-time, discussion, and so we're hopefully going to share like some of the things that you probably already know, but in my experience, it's not that we don't know what to do, but it's about being able to organize what we do know and then implement it that leads to success, right? So my name is Michelle. I'm a regional director with Unite Oregon, and when I started this work about 10 years ago here in the Valley, I got involved in the kind of these spaces, right? I was the youngest person in most rooms by 50 years or so at the time. Luckily, that's shifted, and I think we have much more of an intergenerational, a much more diverse movement now, and that's really exciting to see that reflected in this room. So I'm really, really excited about that. The things that when I think about sustaining the movement for the long term, I think about people, right? Like, this is about people. It's about issues. I'm a policy wonk. In my free time, I listen to podcasts that are like really in the weeds about like healthcare policy and housing policy. Like, that's how I relax. But that's not how most people relax, right? This isn't about necessarily the wonky stuff. This is about people. And so if building and maintaining a movement for the long term is about people, this is where I go to think about like the three things that get in the way and the three things that I try to focus on to make sure that I'm meeting people and bringing people into that work. The three things that I find that get in the way for me and for the organizations that I've worked with are moralism, right? So for me, getting blinded, moralism, right? So we're here because we're passionate. And sometimes it's really hard to go up to someone on the street and try to have a conversation and say, hey, don't you want to call your congressman because this terrible thing might happen or this wonderful thing could happen? And they're like, not really. That's really hard, right? You kind of sometimes want to shake people. And so that can get in the way for me. My expectations that everyone has the same passion that I do and sees the issues the way that I do, sees all the connections from their lived experience to this policy that is not maybe at first blush relevant to folks that I'm talking to. The second one is getting stuck in the mentality of just building and maintaining our own organizations. Sometimes that gets in the way of seeing the people that we're trying to reach and what their needs are and where we need to go to meet them. And then related to that, following our model. So I've been a part of many organizations, and we'll be saying, okay, here's who we want to reach, here's what we want to accomplish, how are we going to do it? And instead of saying, here's our strategy, we say, well, our model is. So that can get in the way as well, right? Because if we're not being flexible and responsive, then, and the model stays static, the people and the context change, and we suddenly are not as relevant and effective as we could be. So those are my three things that I find for me and the organizations I've worked for can get in the way. So the three things I wanted to talk about today that I try to stay focused on are keep it accessible, keep it connected, and keep pushing. So keep it accessible. When I started in this work, I was in a lot of like committee meetings and board meetings where people would say, gosh, like, where are the young people? Like, they really must not care about this work or this issue. Where are the people of color? Where are the working families? Like, why are we the only ones carrying this burden, right? But the meeting was like 9 a.m. on a Thursday. And there wasn't childcare. And there was a few disconnects. So before asking those questions, trying to remind myself to ask or to look at my culture and look at my structure that I'm setting up. Is it really accessible for the folks that I really want to be driving the work or part of the conversation? So that's keep it accessible. Second one is keep it connected, and that's about relevance. Not relevance in terms of is it important, but relevance in terms of how connected is it to the things that keep the people that I want to reach up at night. So the people I want to reach probably aren't being kept up at night by inclusionary zoning land use policy, right? That might be something I want to organize on. So how do I connect it to the things, they probably are up at night wondering how they're going to make rent. And so how do I meet people there and then build the conversation to where we need to take action where there's an opportunity. So that's keep it connected. And then the third one is power. And power can be, of course, built. It can also be co-opted. So my favorite quote about power is, we will have the justice, we have the power to compel. And in a conservative rural context, which is where I've spent my whole life, like Medford is the biggest city I've ever lived near. I grew up in rural Idaho before moving here when I was 12. It can be really tempting sometimes to think, well, if I'm really nice to these folks over here, maybe they will give me what I want, instead of being willing to, in a small community, say, yes, like we are going to push, and not that we shouldn't be strategic, but making sure we're building power and not giving that power away too easily in the hopes that we'll get an outcome given to us, right?
Right.
So those are the three things I find that I try to stay focused on. Like I said, they're probably things you already know, but I'm hoping this is what I do for myself. I have it up in my office, keep it accessible, keep it connected, and keep pushing.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Sohl, and I am the director of Rogue Climate. So we share a space with Unite Oregon and the Racial Equity Coalition, sometimes the Northwest Forest Worker Center, and a lot of other groups in the Rogue Valley. So what she said, and then there's a couple other things that I want to talk about, but I also just really want to acknowledge all the people that are here in this room that have been doing this work or types of this work in different iterations at different times for a very long time. There's a lot of knowledge in this room that I think that you all will get to learn from each other for many years to come, for the next 4 years and beyond. So a couple of things I want to add on to what Ricardo and Michelle said. So Rogue Climate, we started about 4 years ago, and I feel like we've gone through a lot of huge waves and very quick learning phases, from feeling completely overwhelmed and we had no idea what we were doing, to feeling like we sort of knew what we were doing, to maybe we kind of know what we're doing now. And I think that that's a process that when you commit to taking down Walden or whatever it is that you are doing, that you'll learn along the way everything that you need to know to do that. So, but a couple of the key things that I think are important to building a grassroots movement in the long term are, first, developing new leaders. I think it's really easy to, as leaders, as you all are in your communities and with your own groups, it's easy to kind of get stuck in a position of feeling like it all falls on your shoulders, you're responsible for it all. And I think that as organizers, it's really imperative for us to remember that actually it should never just be falling on us, and that our role, our job, is to develop new leaders. And that frequently, I think, as we step into more and more leadership, we have access to more and more trainings, to more and more opportunities to learn, and that it's really our responsibility to figure out how can we take that knowledge and those trainings back to train other leaders. And that as in that shift from becoming an activist to an organizer, our role really shifts to developing new leaders and stepping out of those positions of power to continue to develop more people from different backgrounds and different experiences to step into those positions of power. So I think that's a really, really key piece, is developing new leaders. Another thing that I think we forget to do sometimes, because the challenges that we face are so big and we have so much to do all the time and it never stops and there's always more that you could always be doing, is that we sometimes forget to build community and really cherish those relationships, because at the end of the day, our work is about relationships. Organizing and change is about relationships and building power together. And so it is so important to build community for the long haul, because it's going to be a really long haul. And the work isn't going to stop after a year or 4 years. It's going to keep going. So a couple of the things that we've been trying to do at the RAC are like creating spaces that people feel welcome to come and learn from each other and work together. And doing things like, a couple months ago we had a Don't Burn Out barbecue, where we totally talked about work, but we weren't supposed to. But just finding times to take a step back from the work, and it's going to be there the next day, and it's going to be there the next day, but really making sure to get to know and cherish the relationships with the people that we get to be doing this work with. And I think for me, a lot of the issues that we face today are really big and really overwhelming. And But I think what helps me continue to move through that is the amazing people I get to work with every day and the amazing new people that I get to meet from across the state and across the region that are also like jumping into this work together, and that is like the best part of doing the work, and so we need to remember to create community and invest in it. And then I think the third piece that is so important is just to take a break and to shut off sometimes. Like that's okay. Everybody, you should give people in your group and each other the permission to do that because it's so important. We as leaders can't do our best work and support people in the best way that we can and that we need to if we're not also taking care of ourselves and doing what we need to do to be fulfilled and be filled up. Because you only do have so much energy, we only do have so many hours in the day, and to do our best work, we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and our relationships and the other things in our life that's also important, because this work is going to go on for a long time, and we need to be in it for the long term. So we can't lose anybody in this room because because we need you all in the long term.
Burnout barbecue.
Yeah, you just barbecue, yeah.
So thanks. I'd like to tap into the intelligence in the room about this, because it's coming almost exactly on 6 months since the election, and you folks have been instrumental in your own indivisible efforts. And my guess is there have been moments when you've been really buoyed and encouraged by persistence, where you're going, wow, this is amazing, and others where maybe you get a little discouraged. So what are you learning about what sustains persistence, what renews energy in your community? What are you learning, and what are you clueless about how all this works? What do you need help with? Yeah, go ahead and stand up, and again, your name and area.
I'm Mimi from Redmond. I learned and have in the past that I can take on 2 issues, and I stay on my 2 issues, and I stay out of the others. And I just hope someone else works on those other issues.
Okay.
So that has helped me a lot.
Good. Yes.
Sarah Ashlynn. Just the obvious one for me as far as sustaining is large successful events. I would consider this one of them right now. I think this is an awesome turnout and really successful, good networking, but I know the Climate March last Saturday, like really definitely took me way up there, being there and being a part of that.
So let me follow up and ask, how can we better use those wonderful days like the Climate March moving forward? How can we use them even better than we do to sustain energy?
Burnout barbecue.
Yeah.
Don't burn out.
Burnout barbecue. Got that one, Paul?
You can recall those memories and hold them in. Like I remember being at the Women's March and thinking, this is something I'm going to hold in my heart.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's fuel for the fire for the long haul. Those kinds of things.
Yes, your name and area again.
I'm Bill from Redmond. I just think talking, particularly in small groups, is not enough. It needs to lead to an action.
Okay.
Josefina, Redmond. Create networks between the different communities and the different backgrounds. Like, for example, now in Bend and in Central Oregon, we had the help for the church. And the church is create a network that be sanctuary cities like Bend and Redmond. And they know the needs that we have it for the Latino community. And create little networks between, and in one moment, all the network is going to come together.
Can I say something on that? So one of the things that also like keeps me going in the long term is learning from other successes around the state. So every 3 months I get together with Josefina and other people on a board that we're both a part of, and I get to hear what amazing work they're doing in their parts of the state, and it reminds me that we're not alone in this work, but there's people across the state and across the country and also across the world that are doing really important work. And I think it's just important to find those networks, like you were just saying, Josefina.
If I may add as well to that. Oh, I apologize. Just a quick thought on that as well. And it goes and plays into what you said before as well, is that realizing that not everything falls into your shoulders. So when you build these coalitions, when you're in touch with other organizations, it helps you, one, analyze some things that might have worked in some areas and you can duplicate. You don't have to reinvent the wheel in a lot of the instances. Again, there's a lot of organizations also that have tried to do this work before as well. So being able to learn from those experiences, from those individuals, expanding your network, doesn't just allow you to really have a better strategic process of how to approach issues moving forward, but also realizing that you're not alone. It's not going to fall only upon your shoulders, and building those coalitions, those organizations and individuals that can tackle this issue with you. It's going to be crucial moving forward.
What do we have here?
Ashlynn. I have family members. I have a sister in Chicago who is very involved, and we talk all the time. And it's not a competitive thing, but it's like, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And it's so different. She's in a huge city, and I'm in Ashland. But it feels really nice to have that daily contact of, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? And it's a constant reminder to do something every day.
Well, I'd like to hear more about that, about ways we can be better supporting each other, because I'm sure it's almost universal that we have our dips, our peaks and valleys personally about this work. So are people buddying up, or how many people are doing something like that, and can we do a better job of supporting each other? Yeah, Skip.
Skip Andrew from Ashland. My brain isn't quite working the way I'd like it, so have some patience if you would. I volunteer with Pachamama, and we struggled for the first couple of years that I was there. We didn't make, our projects didn't work cooperatively. We left meetings not feeling well about things. And suddenly this woman appeared, I think she's from Canada, with what she calls circles work. And what's really interesting is she came with a template that's for addressing just what we're talking about. So in every we meet every 2 weeks, and it's a different facilitator each week. And there are assignments for each group. The template is basically, I won't tell you how it's done, but it's done with, maybe I ought to mention a little bit. For example, we have somebody that's called a stacker. A stacker is somebody who, when you're having a conversation, keeps track of who's doing it and who's next term on it. We have another aspect is we have somebody who's paying attention to what we call the good energy. And then we have another one when we first start out where we just go around quickly about what's our inner weather. You notice all these things are helping people to create now very, very actively, and at the same time take care of ourselves. And at the end of a meeting, we do two things. One is there anyone who wants to leave with sour mouth, kind of? And the other one is passing, what's the word for saying you did something nice or good? Because the word of
Blessings.
Blessings.
Pass it forward.
Pay it forward.
Appreciation.
That's a lot of great words! Anyway, we do that. And it works. Personally, for me, since and this is something that's welcomed in this circle, after the night of the election, I'm sure all of us felt just I don't know what the words are.
Terrible. Devastating.
That's some more words. Something that's really helped me is about a month ago, I realized, well, every so I'm down, I want to cry. So now I have a new routine. Cry in the morning, work in the afternoon.
Yes, name and area, please.
Donna Henderson, South Wasco County. And as the gentleman over here was speaking, I thought I'd look up where to find out more information about that circle process, because it really is quite wonderful. And you can find information about the process from the Center for Restorative Justice and Peacemaking. And it has a whole description about how to use that in any group kind of situation.
And I'm happy to send emails about it as well.
Great.
Yes.
That's you.
I just want to follow on what Skip was saying. He's talked about someone came in and suddenly there was a template, for acting or for self-maintenance or self-help for the group. I'll also direct you to a site. It's called the Mosaic Institute. It's in Seattle. It's by Michael Meade, M-E-A-D-E. There's wonderful historical, cultural information that he's gathering. He's a storyteller and a myth relater. The template exists. We just have to look for it. And if you look through our history, human history, tribal, indigenous groups, when there was a stressful situation for the tribe, meaning there was either famine or something, a war, something, they were being attacked, or some crisis that really stressed out this tribe, there were certain people who were activated. And that activation became the calling, and not
Calling.
That's my mother. She used to say, when I used to talk to her about things like this, she said, "Tim, you just have the burden of knowing." Okay, so that's actually true. So you become active. But what the end result is, you may learn how to organize, and you may learn how to find a website and do the networking and all of this. But what you have to do, besides becoming an organizer, you have to evolve beyond that personally and spiritually. You become a healer. And that's what it's about, is that you start to build bridges, and your soul begins to change. And I too was an activist in high school. I started a draft counseling center after school in a Catholic neighborhood. And yeah, it was a struggle. But ever since then, what came and went, but you begin to open up and you begin to take the burden not only off your shoulders, which you've been carrying, but you start to unburden this space called right here. And you start to open that up. And I'm just beginning to learn what that means. I'm 64. And I already had my 64th birthday. But we're on a cultural journey. I mean, we're in a culture war, in a moral war, and there are casualties. There's winning, and there's losses, and there's crying, and there's jubilation. And you kind of have to take it all. Knowing that you're not on the path by yourself is huge. Having a buddy system, having a community just kind of evolve, and everyone said, where did all these people come from all of a sudden? Well, guess what? They've been called. So those people have come up. And for people who have already come up and they have gained a little more understanding of themselves, and they find this power that, well, where did that come from, you know? I remember being afraid all the time and crashing and not being able to keep it together. You find a little more power, a little more strength in that, and then you kind of lift someone else up. And that has exponential impact. The way we can spread an idea, like globally, in like milliseconds, that hasn't even begun to be tapped. It's kind of out of control with the whole tweet thing and everything. Has a real dark side to that, but that technology, I think, is going to help us communicate spiritually as well as technically and logistically and all the tactics we need to do to employ, to fight. But we need to be working right here, each one of us, right on this space. And that's taking care of each other and basically introducing this. I consider to be a ritual gathering. This is kind of a meeting around the fire. And those kind of things happen, and they can happen on small scale. Every year we do, on New Year's Eve, we do this Burn the Bad Karma bonfire. And we encourage everyone to come, and it's a big fire, and it usually lasts till after midnight. And people can bring an offering to end the year and to begin the new. And we all kind of take that away. A takeaway is something that we brought, and something, you take away something that you never even expected. So I think introducing self-care, ritual, and the spiritual growth is something not to take for granted.
You're going to have a huge fire at the end of this year.
Name and location.
Emma in Klamath Falls. I'm going to take it from the very spiritual to the very practical. How do you find and retain non-flaky people? So I have my own particular little group. Out of our original leadership group, we've had a couple of spectacular burnouts, and we've had a couple of just slow fadeaways. And we're now down to a skeleton crew, and we just don't have the personnel we need to do even the minimal amount of stuff. We have an email list with like 150 people who were very enthusiastic right after the election, and who knows what level of ability or interest they have now. A couple of general calls for, hey, does anyone want to step up and do more, have been unanswered. This is Klamath Falls. It's not like we have this endless pool like you do here in Ashland of liberals.
We have our share of plates too.
Yeah. So what advice can you give me about how I can find some people to help spread the load?
Or just keep the flakes fired up.
Yeah. Or keep the flakes going. Grand line.
Well, I think, so, yeah, I think that's something probably everyone in this room can relate to, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I think for myself, when I start feeling that frustration, I have a similar problem with gardening, and to me, it's related with gardening. So I can, so sometimes I really want to grow a lot of beautiful plants, and they start like not being green and being kind of wilty, and I'm like, what? Why are you not growing the way? And I realize like I'm not cultivating in the way that I need to, and that's how I try to approach my volunteer management as well. So again, the organization I work for has been around for like over 3 decades, and so we've gone up and we've gone down, and we've all experienced those times, and there's some ebb and flow. Of course, that's normal, but when we really feel like we're down to like 3 of us trying to carry the whole load, sometimes it's about reevaluating. Something's shifted in the community. An issue has shifted. The way people are experiencing an issue has shifted. People have gone from alarm to overwhelm and hiding under the bed. Something's shifted in the way that people are relating to the work that we're doing. And so how can we shift the way we're talking about it, the way we're inviting people into it? We've had some similar, we were flooded with phone calls right after the election, and donations, right? What can we do? Oh my God, all this stuff. And then people started going away. And so what we started doing is having some events that were like, we're gonna have some chocolate and some snacks, and it's every Monday from this time to this time. It's on our social media, it's on our website, it's in every e-blast that goes out, every phone call that comes in. We're like, well, you can come on Monday, so that staff aren't scrambling to do individual orientations all the time for people who may or may not show up again. And then everyone comes in, they get their short orientation, and whatever our highest need is that week, it's a phone bank, it's a letter stuffing, it's a door-to-door canvas, whatever it is, that's what whoever shows up does. And sometimes it's 3 people and they go back and bring other people. Sometimes it's, right before the Medford Climate March, it was 18 people making art for the climate march. So it takes some of the burden, and it's called a soft landing, right? So how do you institutionalize a landing spot that's easy for folks, that is easier for you, and then it's like a sieve. The people who connect to the work will stay. People who don't connect, you haven't expended any more energy identifying them, and maybe they'll come back at some other time. But anyway, so that's kind of how that's the thought process that I try to engage in when I'm feeling that way is what's shifted, what am I missing, how can we change our structure and way that we're engaging folks. Do we know, is there, instead of sending out an email to my whole list and everyone thinks someone else took care of it, is there a list of 10 people that I can call individually and say, hey, we really could use 2 hours of your time on Tuesday? How do I shift so that I'm not continuing to do what I'm doing and then continuing to not have the result that I need? Because then I'm going to burn out, right? And then we're all, So clearly we need you, and we don't want you to burn out. And so, yeah.
I'd like to offer 2 thoughts. One, I hope specific to your question. I think this is another very useful place for a buddy system. So if you have a particular need and you need it off your plate, you know that you need it to be done. At least I'm more receptive if I hear, would you be one of 2 people collaborating to do this task? It feels much more comfortable for me. So I think buddies really work there. And then a little bit more generally, and this relates to what Michelle was saying, if we're talking about how to deal or head off discouragement, I think discouragement depends a lot on what your expectations are going in. If you're disappointed, it relates to what you expected to have happen. And I think, it's fine to say generally this is a marathon, not a sprint. We kind of all get what that means. But what does that really mean on the ground on a particular issue? And I'm thinking of a session earlier today on direct action when we were asked to align ourselves on whether particular things were effective or ineffective tactics. And a couple people said they felt that the work at the Walden Town Hall meeting, they didn't feel was very effective. And the reason they felt that was that he went back and continued his leadership on this legislation. Right. So how can we call that effective? Well, that underlying that is an expectation that our goal in going there was to flip Walden on the healthcare issue. Okay, that would be a sprint. That would be a very successful, miraculous sprint. So if we can help each other going, okay, we're going to do this Walden action. What are our expectations here? Why are we doing this? What are our expectations? Then we're saving ourselves disappointment and falling away from the movement when he doesn't go back to Washington and advocate for a single-payer system. So I think it means that we get more explicit issue by issue of what we mean when we say this is a marathon, not a sprint.
And then one other thing I would add too is that there's also some really practical tools for how to develop volunteers. So, volunteers start at different places, they need different things to develop. And so there's, and either Michelle or Ricardo or I probably have some of these actual tools and trainings and tools that we can send your way too. But there's things like one-on-one meetings or coffee dates. So if I get a new volunteer that, maybe responded right after the election or with some interest, like the best thing you can do next is actually have a coffee date with them or sit down with them and figure out what are their interests, what are their skills, what do they like to do, what do they not like to do. Because sometimes you might be asking somebody to do something that they just hate doing. And it's not that they don't want to do it, but they might be a person that hates making phone calls, but maybe they would love to show up and database for 2 hours, so there needs to be a step of really figuring out what are the needs, what needs to happen, and what can they offer, and making sure that we're matching volunteers with the right thing. And then also that we are there's like an organizer term called a leadership ladder, so that we're starting people at step 1 and we're taking them step by step up to leadership positions where they have more responsibility and more buy-in and commitment. So it's hard to keep volunteers engaged, but there are actual like practical things to help make that process easier that we can help share some resources. If that
I'm
would be
just
helpful.
curious, just by a show of hands, how many people would like that list? Okay, great. So Hannah, if you could send that to me, I will include it in the packet, because I'm going to be sending everybody here all of the presentations, all the PowerPoints, everything that we've been seeing today.
To add a little bit to those points as well, and I'm not going to take a lot of time because I know everybody has a lot of questions, but just the last touch, that volunteerism, it really is an art. It's something that you're going to go through your ups and downs. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, especially for organizations that are really new, organizations that really need to establish that structure that a lot of volunteers seek. And so really being able to have those one-on-ones and really analyzing what each individual is searching for, kind of combine both of the aspects that Michelle and Hannah touched in. Don't burn yourself out, knowing that know and understand that you're probably not going to be able to retain 110% of everybody that comes through, but being able to analyze where do we put the people that are interested in certain areas, fields, activities, to those places, so that we're also using our capacity, our available capacity, the best way possible. Because if you're putting individuals, like Hannah said, in tasks or actions that they are not comfortable in, that they don't find interesting, that's not putting capacity at its fullest. And so really realizing those things, it's an art, it's something that you really got to get used to. That's why a lot of organizations have departments solely focusing on volunteers. They have volunteer coordinators, all those things. So really understanding that it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time to realize those things, to get used to them. You're going to go through your ups and downs, but as it goes through and you keep learning these new tools that hopefully you'll get soon, just implement them little by little and see what works with your community as well. What might work here in Ashland might not work in Klamath. So realizing those things, touching one-on-one with those people.
And I think the other last piece on that too, I'm sorry to keep doing this, but this is one of the most important things that you all do is recruit people, develop them, and then recruit more people. And I think that's the other thing is that, I don't know if I totally believe this, but some people say in organizing, if you're not growing, you're dying. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also the case, is that we need to continue, people's lives change, they move, they get a different job, they need to take a break, so people are always going through different things in their life, and so that means that we need to constantly be inviting more and more people in, because we need a bigger and bigger movement. So that's also something that we always have to be doing, is recruiting people, developing people, and recruiting more people.
So let's go here and then next to you. First here,
I was
name
just going
and
to
place.
say, I was a hospice director, and that's a almost all volunteer organization. And the thing that they said the most, even more important to them than hooking up with what they wanted to do, is were they useful? If I'm going to leave my house and I'm not going to be paid and I'm going to put in a shift or whatever, I want to feel I did something useful for somebody. And that was their bottom line with it, that they wanted to feel useful.
And appreciated.
Yes, well, we did a lot of that. When you're working with death and dying, you got to keep it light somehow.
And that goes a bit into what was discussed earlier today in terms of expectations, right? So when the town hall happened, did those individuals feel useful in that situation? So being able to have that roadmap to realizing, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve, and giving them a clear sense of what the goal is going to be essential to making them realize, was I useful in this scenario, in this action, in this activity. That activity that happened in the town hall was impactful because people showed up, it wasn't empty, and it's Walton usually doesn't like showing up, period, in a sense. But showing them that we are watching them too puts that accountability, regardless of what he does when he goes back doing his own business. So having that clear path is very essential.
That's good.
It's created a great conversation for this.
Yeah.
So let's go here and then we'll go over here.
Okay, Josefina. Well, give me a tip about the voluntaries that came from myself. When I came to that country, I need to start in zero. Because if I have a background and a degree in my country, I can use that degree and that background here. and I started doing voluntary job. And the voluntary job give me a real job. And that's one tip I give you the people. If you start doing voluntary job, maybe in the future, all the experience you have in the voluntary job can give you a real job. But don't forget your voluntary job. Go back.
Yes, it was right here, please.
Cory Ashlynn, and I've been in the region for 25 years. I've worked with some really dynamic people, and the Marxists, they're dying off, and they're, I'm feeling like the originals are not the partners in crime anymore. And so I want to hand it to Indivisible for bringing in so many new faces. It's incredible. And so I have always been the type that would say, just give me a homework assignment and you can bet that it'll be done. And that's how I've kind of been like on the seat of my pants doing my activism. And I think that I'm a little overwhelmed at this point. I don't know where the niche is for me. And you've always asked me, do you want to do something, what do you want to do, right? And I don't even know at this point what I want to do. And, I've done the organization stuff, as little as I have, and know that it's not the thing I really love, but I'm hearing how you're saying that you were an activist, and then you became an organizer, and you have more probably empowerment from that, and you're getting more things done, and I'm listening to all of that, and it's part of like guilt of thinking that all of you all are doing all the work, and we're just showing up. We got to do some more. And then some of it is not having the, not feeling like that I can do it, that I can hold that so nicely like you all do. And I'm really, really, really grateful to see such young people, and I know all of you, and I'm like blown away. And at this time of my life, I'm wanting more, I want to take the clutter out of my head. I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to do all this stuff. I want to do what's passionate for me. And I've quit doing some of the things that I do. And I have, I'm very lucky in the fact that I love what I do for work, for money, But I don't want to be the sole proprietor in my house anymore, I want to get out and do the things that I really love to do. And I'm just not sure of myself. And I don't know if you have anything to say about this, but I'm being in my truth. And my kids are gone. That's really cool. That's really cool, and I did a great job, and I was like advocating for, nonviolent men in my life, and for a long time, and I did it, I've got good kids. And I have time now, and I have time with my husband, and we're doing some really cool things together. And I'm participating in the community. But I always feel like I need to do more, and just not sure where I fit.
So Maura, let me ask you if there is one piece of help that you could ask for other people in Indivisible, one specific thing you'd like help with, what would it be?
I had something to say and I lost it. But, I don't know how to find that sweet spot at this point. And so I'm showing up. It's what I do best. But I'm not sure where to take it. So that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Yes.
I have an idea about that and about all of it. I've been exactly there and exactly in the, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, it's been so much, and here I am, how do I continue, and what do I do? And then a friend of mine gave me the Why We March book. Have y'all seen that, with all of the posters from the women's marches all over the world? And I was going through it page by page by page in this fog. And then I got to a man holding a dry cleaner hanger, you know, with the paper cover. And it just said, never again. And that, for me, is the basis of why we do this. And that's where my passion is. And then I think about Ray Bradbury and how he says, I feed myself. I constantly feed myself. I read and I read and I read and I watch movies and so I'm so full that all I can do is write. It's always there. I never am at a loss because I'm always feeding myself. And that's what I would say, is go to whatever media, whatever thing, whatever book inspires you and find that thing, because it's just going to be there. It's going to be in that book that you open up to the page, that it flops open to, and there's that word that's going to make you go, there it is, that's who I am. And what you said, standing in truth. Finding out what your truth is and being there. And for you, it's your truth.
I do take good care of myself through my experiences, and I make sure that some of the things I do, I never bring politics with me. You know, it's my time. But I'm talking about the movement.
I think in terms of the movement, you addressed a little bit of what I said about the activism and organizer and the separation that I made. So it kind of plays along to what you're feeling as well. For the longest time, especially when I began organizing for Unite Oregon in a full-time space, I got involved full-time as a staff member because of the election. I had a job prior to that as well, and I during my 9-to-5 work, I got calls, probably 10 a minute, you know, like, can you please do this speech? Can you talk to this newspaper? Or a family just telling me, can you help us out? I don't know what's going to happen. I'm afraid. I have children. What can I do? And it scared me. It scared me that I wasn't able to put every effort that I could of myself to them. I was only doing this part-time when I could after work. And it was draining. So I said, you know what, if I'm going to be a leader, I'm going to try to devote as much as I can to my work, to my activism. So stepping away from that job, becoming a full-time organizer was something, but still in the same mentality of an activist. When I took that decision, I was still in that mentality of like, this is me, I have to do this. They're coming to me, I got to do this. When I started working full-time with Unite Oregon, it made me have a different perception. The trainings that I had with Michelle, with my other coworker Nick Day, having a different perspective of what that means is crucial. And that's what I mean by taking a different view about being an activist and an organizer. Like I said, a lot of the times it does play together. But when it comes to realizing your effect on the movement, your effect in your community, to the people, to the mission of what you're trying to do, there's two different things. Two different things that you need to realize. And so, as an organizer, instead of being that activist that always showed up and did a lot of things, stepping back, realizing that I might not be the one doing all of the things, I might not be the one that does the direct change, if you will, or find a niche within this fight, but I'm giving that space for those individuals to do so. And I can say the same for you, with me, personally even. Like you said, you know, all four of us up here in the stage, we've been in those spaces where your conversations have allowed me, as an individual and as an activist, to speak up. So sometimes we don't realize the work that we do as an organizer. Sometimes we don't realize the changes that we've made. And it's okay to feel lost sometimes as well. Of like, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know if this is actually making change, or if this is actually, you know, something that's working. Am I in the right spot? Am I in the right organization? Is this the right position for me? At the end of the day, when you realize that you being able to make those changes for those individuals, whether they express it to you or not, you're making it. It's happening. And sometimes it might be unclear, but like for some individuals, when they flip through pages of a book and they realize why they do what they do, it's all that's needed. And so I can tell you, one, personally, you have made those spaces available for individuals, but two, even when you don't realize it or there's someone that tells you that, having that shift in mentality, that it's okay, and it's okay to feel that way sometimes as well.
So we have about 15 minutes and a bunch of hands, so kind of concise, please. Back there and then go over here.
So I've been in the same spot you are for most of the last few months, and a few of the things that have helped me, and I'm really good at leveraging other people's ideas. So Mamie said right at the start of this, find one or two issues that you're really passionate about and know that other people are going to pick up the rest. We can't solve everything ourselves. So that really resonated with me. The other thing, going all the way back to the very first session of the day with Peter and Rich, was Rich's discussion about strategy and tactics. We're all diving into the tactics, but our own personal strategic thought process gets lost, and that's where we get wound up in this, oh God, I'm doing the stuff, but I don't feel whole yet. And I was talking with someone else earlier. I read an article recently about the Schultz Hour, and George Shultz, when he was Secretary of State and deeply ingrained in the Reagan White House, and I know, sorry. But what he did was 1 hour a week, as busy as he was, getting like 6 hours of sleep a night, 1 hour a week he carved out, and the only people that were allowed to contact him were his wife and the president. And he spent that 1 hour a week, just him and a piece of paper and a pen, strategically thinking about himself, his life, his job. And I've been trying to implement that over the last couple of weeks to months, and it's helped immensely in my understanding of where I want to put my energies. Taking the time to do a strategic thinking hour about your own personal strategy might help.
Josh, Sisters is where I live, and there's so many great things that have been said in this session by everybody that's spoken, really, and so I want to echo those. I just speak about the things that have touched me. I mean, in the week after the election, I wrote a post. I titled "Mourn, Heal, Act." You know, so we do need to take care of ourselves and, you know, do what we need to do, like whether it's, like I don't look at my email in the morning. I take my son to the school bus, I make breakfast, I have coffee, I do yoga, do all these things before I have to be prepared to confront what's there, you know. I think it's important because it's not just, I don't want to just be reactionary, you know, I want to contribute in a positive way when I'm ready to contribute, because there's too much just reacting. So add value, but I also want, the other thing I want to bring up is, I mentioned, I forwarded you this article, so I really like Rebecca Solnit's work, and she wrote a book called Hope in the Dark, which she wrote in 2004, right around the time of the Gulf War, and there's a collection of essays about being hopeful, really. You know, because there's a new article that's in the Guardian a month or two ago, but where, you know, we don't know the impact of our actions. Like she uses in this article, to illustrate her point, you know, that the Gandhi that we know from India was in England and witnessed some women suffragettes being arrested, and he wrote a whole essay about this, and this is well before he became the leader that we know of in Gandhi. So the impact of these suffragettes had on Gandhi was profound. What the impact of Gandhi had on the people in the American South, you know, in the civil rights movement, was also profound. They looked to Gandhi and said, we're going to take this nonviolent action. And those people in the South that was echoes in the anti-apartheid movement and on and on. And so there are all these things exist on this continuum, and we don't know who was standing in one of those women's marches that is going to be the next movement leader, right? But everything that we do matters. The most important thing is that we do it, right?
Good. Thank you. Yes, right here. Name and place.
Sid from Bend. And I'm going to take a somewhat contrarian view of some of this. Sorry. But, like, for example, there's to be an activist and an organizer. That's an important distinction to know and understand, but it's also important to understand that you need both. And that if you are by nature an activist, don't think like you've got to become an organizer. Be an activist, show up, because all the organizing in the world is worth nothing if people aren't showing up. Okay, sorry, but it's really important. The key is to be true to yourself and who you are. Just take care of yourself. All the rest run dead. Okay, some of us are wired to. You take care of yourself by never stopping. Okay, and if you recognize about yourself, do that, and don't worry about it. And just because some other people think that they've got to rest. Great, rest, don't make me, okay? So, and then another point I'd like to make, sorry, is, because this is about how do we retain the level of emotion, people working on things, and so I wanted to relay a lesson that I'd like to say, this is a lesson I have learned, but I'd be hypocrite to say that because it's a lesson that I have intellectually tried to internalize over the last 50 years and I don't learn it, okay? And I keep making the same mistake over and over again. I'm going to lay it out there in case anybody else suffers from this and hasn't actually even, that may be able to actually learn it like you can. And that is that if you are one of those people who is an organizer and who has these ideas about, oh, this is how we have to go about doing this thing, understand that even though we may all be progressives in this room, and we are all allowed to see the same kinds of policies enacted, we're different in the way that we are touched and motivated. And so my mistake, and unfortunately, my wife is exactly the same kind of person, so we were really bad for each other in that regard. And that is that, sorry, but you have this idea about, okay, this is how we can do this, and rather than letting anybody else help, we want to do it all ourselves. So that is destructive both to the person doing it and to the movement. And that you have to learn, when somebody comes up with an idea, do you think, well, yeah, that's an idea, but I would never, participate in that. Guess what? Everybody's not like me, thank God. And so, to be able to give away to somebody and say, even though that's not the way I would do it, I'm going to let you go run with this, as if it were up to me to give them that choice. But some people need to be told that it's okay? Yeah. To let folks run with it and let them do it, and even if you look like they're making mistakes, step back and let them do it, okay? So there's a whole bunch of distracted thoughts. I just want to throw those out there as kind of over the last 50 years of activism, the things that I've tried to learn and I'm still working on it.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that I had the most entertaining ride from Bend. 3.5 hours. So it's been lovely.
Let's go here and then we'll go here, back here.
I'm from Southwest County again. Thinking about what you were saying, Sid and Josh and everyone, as I've been listening to that, I've been understanding in a different way the difference between an organizer and an activist. And the way I'm hearing that those two come together, though, is that as an activist, I also need to become an organizer because I need to be able to organize my own reactions so that activism is not just reactive to whatever is in front of me. And that's what I appreciate, Josh, you were talking about, is that and the Schultz hour and all that stuff, the time that I commit to spending sort of organizing myself is what's going to keep me from burning out, even if I'm basically identifying myself as an activist. I need to become an organizer of my own experience, or that's just going to be, as I think, Josh, you were saying, that just adds more reactivity being an activist otherwise only adds more reactivity to
You don't want to
a world
add
of
noise,
reactivity.
you want to add value.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. I want my activism to be organized. So I really appreciate that distinction and everything that everyone has said about.
Great. So we got 8 or 9 minutes.
Actually, I just found out that Holly needs to leave a little early. She's got a gig tonight. So we have all day tomorrow. We've got a lot of time tomorrow, and tomorrow is all going to be about this. We're going to be working in small groups. We're going to be working with people that are close to us. So if everybody would be okay to put a bookmark in this now, Holly's been so generous, and she's got a huge, huge evening ahead of her. If we could just end a few minutes early. Would everybody be okay with that? Yep. Just to remind everybody that breakfast is at 8 tomorrow, and we start promptly at 8:30. So we've got a nice long time tomorrow. And can we please give our